Hello everybody, welcome back once again. As always, this is Jay, the one who transforms into something slightly less interesting. Checking in once again with the Energon universe, this time with issue 8 of the Transformers, following up from where we left off with the Free Comic Book Day issue. So once again, this issue is setting records, the top selling issue of this month so far, so let's see if it actually is worth that record. So as always, previously on The Transformers. After their humiliating defeat in issue 6, Soundwave challenges Starscream for leadership of the Decepticons, to which he soundly defeats Starscream and presumably kills him. Meanwhile, the Autobots on Earth take time to recover from their wounds, both physical and mental, while a group of Autobots back on Cybertron infiltrate a Decepticon compound to rescue a currently unknown, yet familiar-looking prisoner. We open up with Carly and Spike catching up by the lakeside. Carly attempting to help Spike deal with the trauma of losing his father, but Cliffjumper shows up to be, well, Cliffjumper and kind of ruins the whole thing. Meanwhile, back on Cybertron, we get a brief, by which I mean one single page worth, of Ileta 1 carrying out the mystery prisoner from the previous issue, mostly just to justify putting her on the cover. We jump back to the Decepticons, who are attacking the aircraft carrier that were investigating them in the previous issue, destroying its armaments and commandeering the boat. Thundercracker shows mercy and allows the sailors to escape with their lives, but Soundwave decides that they can't allow any witnesses and slaughters them as they try to flee. We return back to the Ark, and Wheeljack is still having trouble getting Skywarp to stop being such a petty little bitch and cooperate with them, as Wheeljack discovers that he can't take Skywarp offline, otherwise that will completely destroy the Ark. Carly, however, ain't fucking having any of that and pulls out a fucking RPG, which she got from somewhere, and tries to just fucking blow up Skywarp and be done with the whole problem. Optimus convinces her to drop it, but she accidentally fires. However, RC tanks the rocket, saving Skywarp's life, who decides to pay it back by restoring Wheeljack's legs. Optimus attempts to turn this into a learning moment for Carly, but she's not exactly having it and storms out. RC follows Carly out, and the two have a heart-to-heart as we cut back to the Decepticons, who have taken a deep dive underwater for their true destination, to recover the great Decepticon warship, the Nemesis. Back on the Ark, Optimus is having yet another flashback to Sparky's memories, but he's woken up by the somewhat restored Jetfire, who we discover was still partially alive, but only enough spark to restore him partially, leaving him stuck in vehicle mode, a fate that he laments and wishes that he just stayed dead. However, the Autobots' period of rest comes to an end, as the Decepticons tinkering in the Nemesis sets off an alarm, and the Autobots, sans Wheeljack and RC, pile into Jetfire and head off to the signal to stop the Decepticons and whatever they're planning. Speaking of, we return to the Decepticons on the Nemesis. Unfortunately, things aren't going to go super smooth for them, as they discover fellow Decepticon Astrotrain, who has been imprisoned on board the Nemesis for reasons currently unknown, is still on board the ship, to which they make the somewhat unwise decision to set him free. Millennia of imprisonment have driven Astrotrain a wee bit crazy, screaming for blood and seeking Megatron's head for whatever he did to him. Soundwave is able to get him to calm down somewhat, and he temporarily rejoins the Decepticons. As the issue ends, as we discover what Soundwave's true goal was to recover the Nemesis. The ship might not have the power and resources to take off into flight, but it does have the energy to operate the comm systems, and the issue ends with Starscream placing a call back to Cybertron, contacting Shockwave after millennia of silence. So overall, this one's fairly good. It's a little too cluttered at points, though, I think. There's just a few too many different cuts. It should have stayed more focused on individual plots for longer. It kind of has this thing where it jumps back and forth between the Autobots and Decepticons like every 2 or 3 pages. So I think it should have been a little more focused like the last couple of issues have been. But it's overall not terrible. We get a nice big chunk of character moments, like our first real character moment of Spike after his dad died and everything, and him getting out of the hospital, which we didn't really have in the previous issue, which I'm glad we kind of got a nice little one here with him and Carly, even though it's pretty much cut short by Cliffjumper being a fucking nitwit, which is fine. I mean, it makes sense. It's still going with their arc there, and I like that we still haven't resolved that. Like that's going to be going for quite some time. That's not just immediately putting that aside. That's good. That's obviously what they should be doing. I like that they're kind of moving away from Cliffjumper and Carly to Carly and RC. I think those two kind of are going to work a little bit better. I'm not sure. I kind of liked Cliffjumper and Carly as a thing. They were fine, but I kind of like this new direction where they're going with those two. I think it might be a little more interesting, but I don't know. I kind of also feel bad for Cliffjumper. I kind of like the angle that they're setting up here with them kind of having that bad blood, and I think it's going to be interesting where it goes forward from there. The stuff with the Decepticons is pretty interesting in this issue overall. Soundwave is proving himself to be a very effective, if not violent and somewhat duplicitous leader, seems like. That seems like what they're going to be setting up with Soundwave for this one, is that he's very two-faced. He's very much kind of your standard Starscreamy-ish, but he's like actually competent and he kind of knows what the fuck he's doing. That seems to be what they're setting up, is that rather than being like super duper loyal, soldier of the word, he's going to be kind of very much self-serving, but for the greater interest of like the Decepticon cause, which is what they kind of did in like Endgame IDW. And I mean, at that point when they did that, it was way too late to kind of do that with Soundwave. But I kind of like here setting that up from the beginning. I like that. The rest of them don't really get to do a whole lot. I like that brief moment there with Thundercracker actually showing mercy to the humans and him kind of being a little disgusted that Soundwave just murdered them, even though he's like, well, we had to. It's for a good cause. We had to do it. It's necessary. Trust me, bro. We had to kill these humans, even though they surrendered and are begging for their lives. Trust me, man. You just trust me. So I like that they're kind of setting up that not all the Decepticons are completely evil, which we had a little bit of with Megatron in the Free Comic Book Day issue 2, where he's not like 100% evil for evil's sake. Like, everybody has so far seemed, relatively speaking, kind of well-intentioned villains from what little character we've gotten. Like, even that little bit there with Skywarp when RC takes the proverbial bullet for him and he ends up kind of finally helping out Wheeljack because of that. I like that. It shows that the Decepticons aren't just completely, cartoonish villains, essentially, which is nice. I like that they're going to be doing that. It seems like it's an interesting angle. I don't know how long that's going to last. It's going to be, again, that's kind of a thing that happened with, like, once you get into late game IDW, where a lot of the Decepticons had kind of either reformed or they're not really, like, evil anymore. They're kind of, like, at most neutral, or at best just kind of, like, doing their own fucking thing for their own purposes. And it got kind of weird where, like, everybody was kind of off on their own thing, and, like, there really wasn't any kind of, like, clear narrative direction that anybody had. It just kind of felt like people were doing things because the script needed them to do things. They didn't really have any motivation. Like, they were still being evil, but they, like, had no reason to actually be evil. So I don't know, it humanizing, for lack of a better word, the Decepticons seems like an interesting angle, and I'm curious to see how things are going to go. But I like the stuff we got. I like the stuff with Thundercracker, and I like the stuff with Skywarp. Those two kind of usually get the short end of the stick, so I like that we're kind of setting them up early too. Astro Train joining the cast is another interesting one. Basically a completely different character from what I remember him being in the cartoon, though I don't really remember Astro Train ever doing a whole lot outside of, like, the one episode he debuted in, and I think there was the other episode where him and the other Triple Changers just kind of, like, said fuck you to Megatron, we're making our own Decepticons, and I think that was, like, the only thing Astro Train ever fucking did that mattered. So having him be this kind of, like, violent psycho berserker type seems like a interesting take for him, but I don't know, he does feel pretty one note so far. I kind of like that he's this little bit of a wild card. For the most part, we kind of don't really know what his character is yet, other than fuck Megatron in particular, which seems to be a common sentiment with a lot of the Decepticons so far. So I don't know, but I've never really much cared for him as a character, to be entirely honest, so it's whatever. But yeah, interesting to have him join the cast too. Again, like, despite having a lot of characters show up, we aren't really feeling bloated in this book specifically. Like, I talked about it before, the overall Energon universe is starting to get a teeny bit bloated at this point, this early on. But Transformers doesn't really feel it. I think it's utilizing its cast fairly well, and it's giving everybody just enough focus where everybody still feels like they matter, but we're not like front loading it with 800 characters. In terms of stuff that I really didn't like in this one, well, for starters, the scene with Alita 1 is completely fucking pointless. We didn't need it. There is no reason at all for that fucking cutaway. Like, okay, sure. It's not that it's not important, it's just the one single page of them on Cybertron was completely fucking pointless, and honestly should have probably been saved for another issue and kind of given more time, kind of actually have it matter to the issue. It just feels completely tacked on, and it feels like it was just an excuse that they could put Alita 1 on the cover, which, I don't know, yeah, I didn't really care for it. And again, like, the stuff with Carly is, it's alright. It's a little too much focus on her, I think, in this one, compared to everybody else. Like Spike has gotten, like, fuck all so far. She's been getting a lot of the human character focus, which, I mean, on one hand is okay, but it's like give her a little less space. She's getting the lion majority of character development, and, like, I don't know, I didn't really like the part with her kind of snapping at Optimus when she tried to fucking murder a guy with a rocket launcher, and Optimus is trying to, like, talk to her and be Optimus, and she kind of storms out like a bitch. Like, don't get me wrong, I get it completely with everything that's been going on, especially, the shit with Starscream in the previous issue, or issue 6 rather. But it's just still like, I've kind of got my fill of her. I kind of want to move on to somebody else for now, even if it's like just like 2 pages worth of Spike or something, just by himself, or with, another character, like any of the Autobots. That's all I really kind of want at this point. It's not that I really hate her at this point. I just kind of like, I got it. I get what they're going for. Give somebody else a little bit more time to focus. I still do like the stuff with her and RC, but I don't know. We kind of need to give somebody else a little bit more focus, I think, at this point. She's gotten a lot out of the human cast, even though the human cast is pretty small. Especially now that Sparky's gone, too, because it was nice when we had him, because he kind of balanced out the human cast. But now that he's not necessarily dead, but whatever the fuck exactly happened to him, however you want to explain it, he's gone, essentially, and we just have her, and Spike has gotten like 0 character development, which I think now especially is time where we really kind of want to focus on him after his dad died. Also, the scene with Jetfire was interesting. I wish it had a little bit more space, because it kind of gets thrown in there at the very end of the issue, and him kind of speed running the why am I still alive? Just let me die. I'm miserable. I can't, they kind of speed run the grief and suffering process of coming back from the dead, partially. Like the whole thing of him being like, I'm stuck in vehicle mode. I can't really see anything anymore. I'm basically a husk. They kind of just plow through it in one page, and it's kind of disappointing. Like we could have had space there to kind of build that up and, build up a little more Jetfire, because, he was in 3 pages and he got fucking killed. We don't really know anything about him, and now he's basically just a spaceship for now, which, I mean, okay, that's fair. That's, again, kind of what he got stuck as being for a little while in the show, too, but I don't know. Again, like, we could have cut the Alita scene and given him more space, or, cut one of the many Carly freakouts and given him a little more time. I don't know. I feel like this one doesn't really properly utilize the space it has. I think it should have focused on other plot lines that it did, and I think it was a little unfocused. Not to say that it was a bad issue by any means, but not as focused, not as refined as the previous ones at this point. But the art, as usual, is really good. I am still digging the new artist. That shot of the Decepticons raising the Nemesis from the seabed is really nice. It's a really good scene. Very effective use of the colors with the underwater kind of blue tone filter on everything. It looks good. It looks really good. I really like how it looks. But beyond that, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about the art. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this issue. Not the most amazing thing in the world, but it's not terrible, and I'm still enjoying it, so I'm curious to see where things are going to go. Obviously, they're setting up Ultra Magnus because it's pretty clear at this point that the mysterious prisoner corpse guy is supposed to be Ultra Magnus. We get a closer look at his face in this one, and it's pretty clearly Magnus's head, but they're trying to stretch out the reveal just for the sake of it, which I don't necessarily mind. You know, it's not like they're trying to make it a big mystery of who he is. You know, it's not like I don't think we're supposed to be surprised that's going to be fucking Magnus. Unless, I mean, that being said, I've been pretty consistently wrong with most of my predictions so far. So, I mean, for all we know, it could be literally anybody else. So who knows? I'm wondering how we're going to start incorporating the stuff on Cybertron into this. I know in the cartoons and the early episodes, they kind of built the not space bridge thing, and that kind of didn't really last super long. And I know the Marvel comics kind of introduced them around this point too. So I imagine we're going to go through that same loop where we get an early one just kind of buff up the cast on Earth, and then we're just going to kind of quietly shove the teleportation shit away and just not talk about it for a little while longer. Which is fine. I think that's fine. That's probably where we're going to lead up to in the next couple issues, is them establishing contact on Cybertron for reinforcements. And I imagine Megatron is probably going to show up sometime around issue 11 or 12. Just because, I mean, again, he's out and about, and that seems like a reasonable point to put him in, is kind of that build-up of that story arc there. But who knows, maybe we'll just get something about Megatron kind of fucking around on Earth by himself for a little while. Who knows, and it might be fun. Marvel did that, and that was usually fairly entertaining, so who knows, we'll see. That's going to be it for me this time. Thank you again very much for watching.